For almost 1,000 years, a single fortress has dominated the banks of the River Thames, watching silently as English history unfolded around it. It's been a symbol of terrifying power, a lavish royal palace, a notorious prison, and even the nation's treasure chest. So let's dive in and explore the many, many faces of the Tower of London.
So, when I say Tower of London, what's the first thing that pops into your head? A massive, imposing castle? A grim, dark prison? A magnificent royal palace? Well, here's the thing. It's all of that, and so much more. The really fascinating story is how it managed to become all of those things at the same time.
And there it is, in all its glory. Officially, it's His Majesty's Royal Palace and Fortress of the Tower of London. This incredible collection of towers and walls, sitting right there on the edge of the city, has been absolutely central to controlling England since the day it was built.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start at the very beginning, with its origins as the Conqueror's fortress. Then we'll get into its wild double life as a palace and prison. After that, we'll tackle its grim reputation, uncover its secret role as a royal strongbox, and finally, see how it became the global icon of London it is today.
So let's get one thing straight from the start. The tower wasn't built to protect London. No, not at all. It was built to control it, to dominate it. Its story begins not with a welcome, but with an occupation.
Let's just run through the timeline real quick. It all kicks off in 1066 with William the Conqueror. Just a few years later, in 1078, work starts on that huge central keep, the White Tower, which is what gives the whole castle its name. Over the next couple of centuries, it gets these massive expansions, and by 1285, the fortress pretty much looks the way it does now.
And if you had any doubt about its purpose, just listen to this. William the Conqueror's own biographer wrote that these forts were built, and I quote, against the restlessness of the huge and brutal populace. The goal was simple, to overawe the Londoners. It was a giant stone reminder every single day of who was in charge.
Okay, now look at the design here. It's just genius. The tower is a masterclass in medieval defense. It's built with these three concentric rings of walls, which are called wards. You can think of them as defensive layers, one inside the other, each one designed to make an attacker's life an absolute nightmare.
And what's so cool is how it grew over time, kind of like a stone onion. At the very center, you've got the innermost ward, with William's original White Tower. Then, King Richard the Lionheart comes along and adds the next layer, the inner ward. And finally, King Edward I builds that massive outer ward, basically creating a fortress inside a fortress.
Okay, now we get to the tower's greatest paradox. For centuries, this place was both the most luxurious, desirable address in the entire kingdom and the one place you absolutely never wanted to end up. On the one hand, you have a grand royal palace. It was tradition for monarchs to stay here for a few nights right before their coronation. But on the other hand, it was a high-stakes prison, and it had been since way back in 1100. It held some incredible people. A future queen like Elizabeth I was imprisoned here, and brilliant minds like Sir Walter Raleigh. It was a place of ultimate power and ultimate vulnerability, all contained within the very same walls.
In this image, wow, it just captures that pageantry perfectly, right? You can see the huge procession for King Edward VI, all starting from the tower on its way to Westminster Abbey. This tradition lasted for centuries, and it really cemented the tower's status, not just as a fort, but as the ceremonial heart of the entire monarchy. But let's be honest, it's the tower's dark side that really captures our imagination. The phrase, "sent to the tower," basically became a death sentence. But how much of that terrifying reputation is actually true? And how much is just, well, a good story?
And a huge part of that reputation is tied to one of history's greatest cold cases, the princes in the tower. Back in 1483, the 12-year-old king, Edward V, and his little brother Richard were brought to the tower, and then they just disappeared, vanished. Everyone assumes they were murdered. It's the one event that really stained the tower's name forever.
But this is where we really have to separate the facts from the legends. The truth is, a lot of the tower's scary image was deliberately cranked up, first by religious propagandists in the 16th century and later by writers in the 19th century who just loved to romanticize all the horror. I mean, yes, torture did happen there, but it was actually pretty rare. We only have records of 48 cases over a 100-year period.
So, with all that in mind, take a guess. How many people do you think were actually executed inside the tower's walls before the World Wars? The answer is probably going to surprise you. It's just 7.
And this slide tells the real story perfectly. Those 7 executions that happened inside the tower, or private, quiet affairs, they were saved for very high-profile people, like Anne Boleyn and Lady Jane Grey, where the government thought a big public execution might be too risky. The real theater of death, the public spectacle, happened just outside the walls on Tower Hill. That's where 112 people were executed over 400 years for everyone to see.
So if the tower wasn't mainly a torture chamber, what else was going on behind those imposing walls? Well, for centuries, it was basically the nation's ultimate safe deposit box.
I mean, it was home to the crown jewels, obviously, but it also housed the royal mint, which is where all the kingdom's coins were made. It was the country's main armory. It was the public record office for super important documents. And, this is my personal favorite, it was the royal menagerie. Yep, a zoo. They had lions living at the tower from as early as 1210. How cool is that?
And all of this brings us to the tower's final, and maybe greatest, transformation, from a working, functional tool of the state to one of the most famous and beloved landmarks on the entire planet. You can really see the evolution right here. On the left, you've got this old engraving of a working fortress on the Thames. And on the right, the icon we all recognize today, surrounded by a modern city, its moat now a beautiful green lawn. It has survived everything, wars, fires, and the endless march of progress.
And today, the tower's importance is recognized across the world. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which means it's protected and looked after by a charity called Historic Royal Palaces. They make sure its incredible stories are kept safe for all of us, for generations to come.
And if you doubt its relevance today, just look at this number. In 2023 alone, almost 2.8 million people walked through those gates. I mean, that's just a staggering number of visitors from every corner of the globe, which proves its power to fascinate us is as strong as ever.
For 1,000 years, the Tower of London has been a mirror, reflecting the power, the fears, and the identity of a nation. It started as this raw symbol of conquest. It became the glittering center of royalty and dark political games, and it guarded the nation's greatest treasures. So now, as a cherished monument and a top tourist spot, the final question is, what does the tower reflect about us today?